Welcome to the LawyerFair.co.uk daily podcast. LawyerFair helps businesses find the right lawyer at the fairest price. But on this podcast, we just chew the fat with some great guests.
Podcast number 98 now with these lovely LawyerFair business podcasts. I'm very excited to be closing in on number 100. And the quality of guests, I think those of you who listen, has been increasing with every clump of broadcasts that we do. We've had a couple of fantastic ones this week, and we have another one today because I'm joined on the line by James Gibbs from Rift Research and Development. Welcome, James.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning to you. It is a glorious sunny day here in West London. How's it treating you then in Kent?
It's actually, for the first time in quite a while, exactly the same. A little bit chilly, but we'll take that.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely right. Now, James, you are going to cover something. There are some issues in life where I confess sometimes I see the headline, I don't necessarily completely understand what it means or why it exists. Justin Bieber is one of them, but R&D tax credits is another. And although having met you a few times now, I'm fully briefed on it. I think it's a subject that many people don't know enough about, and it's clearly a fantastic scheme and one you're an expert in. So you very kindly joining us this morning to give us a bit more information. Could you just give us a kind of definition of what R&D tax credits are?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's Andrew. It's one of the best kept secrets in terms of funding for SMEs and kind of the newer end of the business spectrum at the moment. It was established back in 2000, which means it's been going for quite a long while. But HMRC to date haven't really got the traction that they were hoping for amongst kind of the business community, and I think part of that is. Because it's related to tax, I think a lot of people shy away from it. They're not really sure whether it's something that's going to be relevant for them, whether they're going to go anywhere near it. The long and short of it, in a summary, is that it's a government incentive to reward innovative businesses in the UK. So, in effect, HMRC are running this scheme that's linked to corporation tax. And it gives potentially up to 26% of the amount spent on developing a brand new piece of technology, idea, or a new concept. The way that they've structured it, in effect, is that there's two types of scheme. SME. So their definition of an SME is any company with less than 500 employees and a turnover of 87 million pounds. And if you fit within that group, which there are a lot of companies in the UK that do, then that would put you in the SME category.
No, that's James, just let me clarify, because that's a really important point, because a lot of people misunderstand what SME means and micro means. Are you essentially saying that the SME, their categorization of SME is any company less than what you've just referred to, i.e. right down to startup?
Absolutely, yes. So the types of companies that we're dealing with are anywhere from people who have literally just incorporated their company and have just set up a limited company, all the way through to companies that have been going for many years but haven't yet quite reached that threshold or have chosen not to go anywhere near that threshold. So yes, that's the kind of the main category that we tend to operate in. There is a large company scheme. So if a company is part of a bigger corporate structure, or they have just grown past that definition that I just gave you, then we can still help them for them to a slightly lesser degree. But there is a way of being able to reward them for the innovation and the development that they're doing.
Okay.
So.
No, James, sorry, I was just going to ask you to clarify, because you briefly went through it, but just clarify, if I can refer to it as the rules. What's the criteria? It's specifically, I mean, I read somewhere that it was an advance in science and technology, but that's quite loose. Could you give us a bit more information about who can qualify for this?
Sure. The key thing is that you have to be a limited company. You have to be eligible for corporation tax. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in profit or you actually have to be paying corporation tax. You just need to be eligible for it. So that's the first building block that we need to have in place. in terms of what their version of and their definition of new developments are, in effect, it's got to be a sector-level advancement. So it's got to be an idea or a piece of technology or a widget of some description that doesn't currently exist anywhere else in the market to date. It can be in development and hasn't yet reached the market, but it has to be something that is a sector-leading or unique piece of technology. Now, obviously, some sectors, that's going to be a lot clearer than others. So manufacturing and engineering, for example, if you've just developed a machine that does something that no other machine has ever been able to do, then that's very clear. It's very binary, and it's simple to explain to HMRC.
Yes.
When you start to get into some of the grayer areas, for example, software or IT, it gets a little bit harder to actually define that. But I mean, again, that's kind of then when you need a specialist on board, that specialist in effect will say, right, go through your project, explain to me why you are different to anything else that's out there on the market. And really what HMRC are trying to do is encourage those people who are at the kind of the cutting edge of their new technology, not just people who are rehashing an existing idea just to make it possibly a little bit cheaper or a little bit more accessible. It's got to be quite a revolutionary jump within that particular sector.
No, that's really useful. That's very clear. I mean, we're talking quite a lot of money here, James, aren't we? I mean, what are the kind of
Absolutely.
What are the kind of claims that you've been involved in?
Well, I mean, the typical claim that the figures that HMRC are publishing at the moment say that the typical claim that they're coming across the SME £49,000 back.
Wow.
Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot that are beneath that. Some that have been significantly higher than that, talking in the hundreds of thousands of pounds. And really, what it revolves around is eligible expenditure. So where it becomes quite complex, and why I think a lot of people shy away from it and think that they may not necessarily be eligible, is you need to go through your expenditure and look at the items that do qualify and don't qualify. And I think that's where having somebody who knows what they're doing, they can come in and actually look through all of your expenditure and say, right, we've pulled out the stuff that we know can qualify, and then that's what the calculations are derived from. You need to then support that with information to actually prove to HMRC, firstly, it qualifies and it ticks all of their boxes, and then secondly, this is how we've got to the figures that we're putting across in our corporation tax return. But yeah, the figures are huge, and the key for this as well, Andrew, is that very often it applies to companies who are not yet profitable, people who are in early stages of development where they can't necessarily get funding through typical methods from a bank or through other fund providers. This is something that they've already spent the money and we're helping them reclaim it. So it's a really important cash boost for small businesses in this field.
And the other point is, I think there can be two ways of extracting this, can't there? You can either reduce the tax bill or you can actually get cash back.
Yes, absolutely. So when you've actually submitted that report and HMRC has said, yes, we completely agree with you, you're due this money back, as you say, for the companies who are not yet profitable, a lot of them choose to take it, surrender those those credits, and actually choose to take that as a cash injection, which is obviously massively valuable for their cash flow. Equally, if it's something where the company is doing fairly well, what they can do is choose to offset against future corporation tax, which obviously gives, very, very often gives them a slightly higher benefit level, because the government doesn't have to pay out the cash there and then. But either way, I mean, it's a very, very useful injection for a lot of companies. And
are you finding, I mean, is your sense that there are a lot of companies missing out on this? I mean, what's the market feedback when you go out promoting this
Unfortunately, the figures for last year showed that only 4% of the eligible companies that HMRC believed could claim this were actually using it, which is a frighteningly low level. Frighteningly low level. Yeah. And I think a lot of my job tends to be going out and a little personal crusade to go out there and spread the word as much as possible to say to people, you can potentially claim for this. What you need to do is come and speak to your accountant or a specialist and actually go through that process and establish whether you can get money back from it. Because in effect, it's free money. It's sitting there. It's legislation that is open to a really broad spectrum of companies within the SME sector.
Yeah.
So it's something that they should definitely use. I think, unfortunately, it's one of those things where if you approach your accountant about it, very often accountants are very good at what they do. This is a very, very specialist niche area, though, and they will often say, not really sure, not our area, you'll need to go and speak to somebody else. And I think that's normally when people just switch off.
Well, listen. LawyerFair is all about promoting niche expertise, and why would you go to your trusted advisor if they don't know enough about this subject, however wonderful they might be about your account?
Absolutely.
So I fully endorse that, and I have to say, I can hardly raise a glass of prosecco to my lips at a networking event these days without seeing Rift there. I mean, you are seriously out in the market at the moment. So just talk me through what a kind of typical process is between you and a client claiming these tax credits. How would it go with you?
Well, even to jump back a step, I mean, I work with partnerships and an introducer panel that we put together. So people like accountants, lawyers are really starting to cotton onto this a lot now, especially the ones that deal with commercial and kind of corporate, anything to do with intellectual property. Mm-hmm. They're seeing it as an additional level of depth that they can offer their clients. And in effect, we set up introducer agreements with people in that space. We do pay them for that as well. And it's something that when we get the referral through, so they can literally just be chatting with one of their clients about what their company does. If they think that they can start to hear that these boxes are being ticked, it's a simple referral process across to a company like ours. And then from there, we will do an initial qualifying conversation over the phone. Normally takes about 10, 15 minutes. All of our clients are met individually by one of our technical consultants. So we operate nationally, and we will go and visit that client because we need to get under the skin of the business and really get a feel for what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, when we go through the process with the client, which typically takes probably about 3 to 4 weeks, we need to be able to write a report that goes with the figures that we submit, just to say this is what the company does, and really be able to champion that company and explain why we believe that this is a valid claim. Equally, if HMRC further down the line decide that they want to have a little bit more of a look into a particular claim and run an audit on it, it means that we can then defend that on the client's behalf. So we really get under the skin of the business. At the same time, it just means that we build a lot greater relationship with that client. And very often we now find that clients come back year after year and will actually update us on their projects as they go through the year. They can use us as a sounding board. So if they're just about to spend a big chunk of cash, they can ask us how is it best to actually spend that money so that they maximize their R&D claim next year round. So that's the kind of all-encompassing service that we try and offer our clients, really.
And well, listen, it's fascinating, and although I thought I knew about this, it's been quite educational to me actually listening to this. And this is business critical cash flow, and basically there are 96% of you out there, if you're a business, that aren't claiming this by the records or by the news we're getting from HMRC. So it's pretty critical to understand how this might affect your business and how you might be able to get some cash back or some tax relief. So James, it's a national firm. How do they get hold of Rift? What's the best way?
Best thing to do is just go and have a look at the website first. So Google, type in research, and there are details on there, and that links it straight through to the team here. And either that or speak to your accountant and push them, your accountant or advisors, push them towards us. And yeah, we'll be able to respond to you and get you started on the process. It's there's no upfront fees either, so it's not something that you're going to have a conversation initially and then find there's a big bill comes your way. It's very much a kind of a success fee based thing. We're only going to start charging you as and when we know that there's something there to actually claim on. So yeah, just go along, have a look at the website and get in touch.
Sounds like a no-brainer to at least explore whether you are whether the rules do apply to your business. Listen, James, thank you for stepping in very late as well on this podcast. You're very kind of you to step in from
no problem.
sunny Kent. We will add all those links and the information to the foot of this podcast. But listen, have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, James. And that was another very fine LawyerFair, the business podcast. We have another one coming tomorrow. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the LawyerFair.co.uk daily podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, why not subscribe and download each episode via iTunes or visit us on the LawyerFair.co.uk website.